Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to finally count down the top 10 creatures in ARK Survival Evolved with the island into consideration. There's no DLC creatures here and they were ranked by you guys. So over the past few months I've had these polls out. You've eliminated the worst creature from them until we had the top 10. Then I asked you guys to rank them and here we have the rank. So I've then calculated the amount of votes each creature got and made the top 10 list. So let's get started with number 10, the Dodicarus, which only got 4 votes on the final polls. And I can very clearly see why this one made it to the list, and to be honest, I'm also a bit shocked that it only made number 10. But at the same time, I kind of get it. So the Dodicarus is your key and only really good stone farmer on the island, or in the base game if you will. So it is very clear that it's very important. I mean, you have many options when it comes to wood, berries, and all that, but when it comes to stone, you're kind of stuck with this guy. And stone is very important for a lot of different things in the game, from structures to making gunpowder to all of that. So it's very clear that a Dodicarus is important when you're playing the game. However, other than farming stone and doing a little fun roll, it doesn't have too much going on for him. I mean, it is very slow, so you won't really be using it to travel around the map, and it doesn't really farm or do anything else than stone farming. So I can very clearly see why it made it to the list, but I can also kind of see why it only made it to the 10th spot. Up at number 9, we have the Ankylosaurus with 11 votes. And once again, it's pretty easy to see why this guy made it to the list. I mean, just like the Dodicarus is your only stone farmer, the Ankylosaur is your only metal, crystal, obsidian, and oil farmer. 4 resources that are far more valuable than stone. So this one, in my opinion, should have probably made it even higher than number 9. But once again, just like the Dodicarus, other than farming these resources, it doesn't really do much else. It doesn't really farm a lot of other things, and it is really slow, so you definitely won't be traveling around the map with this guy. And because of those reasons, I feel like even though the value of the resources should have maybe put him higher, I can also very clearly see how he made it only to the bottom of the list. Because other than farming, you don't really use him for anything. Up at number 8, we have the Megatherium with 23 votes. Once again, maybe a little bit shocking, maybe not, but the Megatherium definitely deserves a spot on this list. So first of all, it is a fan favorite amongst a lot of players, and I think the simple bias that they like the creature might have gotten it up here, but it is also pretty useful. I mean, it farms fiber and berries from bushes, thatch from trees, and it's by far the best creature to gather chitin and stuff from insects. And in addition to that, when you attack an insect and kill it, they'll get this really cool buff that increases the attack a lot. So they're really useful there, and they're one of the few creatures that you can actually use to kill bosses with, because this buff is excellent when you're going to kill the spider boss. So that alone makes it really, really useful. However, once again, I mean, in my opinion at least, there are better farmers for every resource except chitin, and you can always use Rexes as a substitute to defeat the boss, so I can kind of see why it didn't make it higher. But regardless, the Megatherium at number 8. At number 7, we have the most surprising one in my opinion, the Otter. The Otter managed to make it to 7th place with 24 votes, slightly more than the Megatherium, and I can see why it made it to the list. But I'm surprised that it made it this far, because this guy really only have one feature other than being the cutest shoulder mount, and that's the fact that it regulates your temperature. So if you don't know, if you equip one of these guys, you will get hypo and hyperthermic insulation, which will protect you a lot from heat and cold. So basically this guy allows you to wear whatever you want, wherever you want, without worrying about freezing or cooking to death. However, other than this, it doesn't really do much. So is this temperature regulation enough to bring it to 7th? Apparently. Not sure if I agree with that, but that's what you guys said anyways. At number 6, we have the Therazino with 31 votes. The Therazino is, in my opinion, the best overall farmer, so I can really easily see why it made it here so far up the list. I personally would have maybe even put it higher, but regardless, Therazino is a beast. It can farm fiber, berries, and wood all separately, meaning you don't need to clog your inventory up if you're going for any of those specific resources. In addition to this, it is very powerful in combat. It's one of the few herbivores with really good damage and damage per second, and is even used to defeat the dragon boss, because the dragon boss deals more damage to carnivores than herbivores, meaning the Therazino, as an herbivore, will take less damage than Rexes, for example. And that alone should say how powerful this guy is. Arguably, other than sauropods, the strongest herbivore, and a great farmer, so I can easily see that this one made the top 10. At number 5, we have the Tyrannus with 42 votes, and I can also see why this guy made it high. I mean, this guy is essential if you're gonna beat the bosses. If you don't know, it's a pretty strong overall big carnivore, but in addition to that, it can scare smaller enemies away, but it can also buff your allies. So if you have an army of Rexes fighting a boss, you can, make them stronger so that they'll kill the boss quicker. And this alone makes it very useful. However, outside of boss fighting though, I would personally not say it's that useful, because I mean, it's pretty slow in its attack, meaning it's more of a group thing, and I can kind of see that it didn't make it even higher. It's definitely essential, but kind of like the Dodec and Ankylo, it has a very specific purpose, and that's pretty much it. At number 4, we have the Spinosaurus with 47 votes. I'm very surprised that this guy made it all the way to number 4, because it isn't really that specialized. I mean, some people use these for bosses, but generally speaking, they don't farm anything too specific. I would say that their biggest strength is simply being a large carnivore to travel the map with, and that is also why I think a lot of people voted it. In addition to fan service, like, this is one of the most famous and popular creatures not only in ARK, but in, the world. And I would say that simple fanboying made it get this far. But either way, I think it's a pretty good mount. If you want a big predator to roam the map with, this is probably going to be your best bet, because it has really good stamina compared to most of the other big predators. And it has pretty decent stats across the board. It also moves really fast in the water and on land, and it has really good DPS. I mean, this guy attacks really fast, faster than the T-Rex, and it deals similar damage. So I can see, both because of it being popular and because it's kind of useful, why it made it to the list. But I'm kind of surprised that it made it all the way to number 4, because it doesn't do anything too special. It's kind of just an all-rounder traveling thing. At number 3, we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex with 55 votes. Just to note that these polls had roughly 200 votes each, so 55 is about 22%, I believe, of the votes. So that's a decent amount, but I'm kind of surprised, and I'm also kind of not surprised that the Rex made it to the top 3. I mean, it is obviously the most popular dino in the world, so simple bias would probably bring it up here all by itself, but still, it is a really useful and necessary dino. This is definitely the best dino to beat the bosses with, one of the best dinos to gather prime meat, because it farms so much of it. So generally speaking, just a really good mount, although I kind of have to be honest that when you think about it, when you strip apart the boss battling factor, this is not really the best traveling mount and used for everything else. Like, it has pretty poor stamina, which is the biggest drawback, and it's also not the fastest. But generally speaking, when it comes to fighting bosses or fighting really strong things, you can't really go wrong with the Rex. And I think that's enough to bring it up on this list. At number 2, we have the Thylak Coolio. So Thylak Coolio is really great. I mean, I love this guy. When it comes to just traveling around the map, this guy is the most fun to use by far. It's powerful, you can fight almost anything out there, including like Rexes, Spinos, everything really. But obviously the most cool thing is the fact that you can climb on walls, meaning you can traverse any terrain with this guy, making it really nice. And I think that's enough. Like, simply the fun of using a Thylo is what everyone loves so much. So I think that's enough to make it go to number 2. So yeah, the Thylak Coolio came at second with 86 votes. Probably mainly because it can climb walls, is strong, and just fun to use. However, number 1 won with a pretty big majority of votes. 152 votes, we have the Argentavis. Now this one isn't really shocking. honestly, if I made a list, I would have probably put the Argentavis here as well, because it is really good. Like, generally speaking, this guy is just a good all-rounder. You can travel the map with him. He has decent speed. I mean, I do prefer having either a mod or to enable that little setting so you can level up the speed. But either way, it's decent speed, but it has, like, everything, really. It has really good weight, it has good stamina, good health, good damage. You can use it for either combat, or carrying stuff, or taming. You can really use him for anything, and I think that's why it's so popular. I mean, if you're gonna tame something, or if you're gonna move a base, you can pick up roughly half of all the creatures on the map, as long as they're not big enough. And you can also pick up smaller mounts in its mouth, meaning you can have 2 creatures picked up at the same time, which is excellent. It has weight reduction for various different resources in its inventory, meaning you can transport more of those resources if you are farming them. So this, together with the Ankylosaurus, is a perfect metal farming combo. And, like, you can choose. You can either level up a lot of weight and carry shitload of resources, or you can level up a lot of damage and you can use it for combat, or you can level up a bit in everything and you can use it for traveling, taming, and all of those things. So generally speaking, it's just a good all-rounder, and arguably what people use the most when you reach the end, you know, the later parts of the game, you know? So, not surprising that the RG made it to #1, but still, maybe a bit shocking, I don't know. Either way though, that was the list, so thank you so much for watching. Sorry that it took a little while. I did put the polls up a little while ago. I just wanted to wait until the votes had sort of staggered. But here it is. Now, if you disagree with this list, then don't blame me. I was not the one who made it. Although, I would really like to see how you guys would rank these 10 creatures, so do that down in the comment section. I'm gonna put my ranking of these 10 there as well, so you can jump there and see my opinion on this. Or if you don't want to rank these creatures, if you completely disagree with that, you can also just write your top 10 creatures and, you know, don't bother about these and pick your own. But either way, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you can subscribe and like the video, it helps me out a lot. And I'll see you sometime very soon, hopefully. So, goodbye.